Hello and welcome to the Money Back Bet weekly league review, and we are currently today, I believe it's the 23rd of December. We are bang in the middle of the festive period, and as such, most of the major European leagues have finished for Christmas. It's only the British leagues that play on during these rather harsh weather conditions, and good on them. That's what I say. It's also a slightly interesting time to be doing a weekly roundup because, like I said, there's only one league to review on our list of 5 leagues that we cover, which is the English Premier League, and we actually have quite a lot of matches, a whole spate of matches coming up this week. But today we're just going to concentrate on the Boxing Day games, where all 20 Premier League teams are in action. If we pull up the latest data set that we have in front of us, and this has just been updated after the very, very, very cagey 0-0 affair between Arsenal and Chelsea that anybody could have seen that one coming. So it's probably best to just take a look at this set by the key metric, always for us, is that of average goals per match. So if I just bring that up here, that will show us where we need to start. Anyway, so and the whole idea about these reviews and these roundups isn't really for me to give you a commentator style explanation about what happened last week or what to expect next week. What this really is just a key look at some statistics and some KPIs and factors that you might be interested in before parting with your hard-earned cash, especially over the Christmas holidays. So, part of what we strive to do here at Money Back Bet is to make sure that if you do bet, you are very well informed and you have a slight edge over the bookmaker, and you want to we want to put some money back in your pocket and make sure you win. Anyway, enough about that. Looking at the table the way it is, you can see the highlighted areas. Manchester City actually lead the league in terms of average goals per game, average goals that they score, and the amount of goals per shot on target, just per shot in total, which is absolutely outstanding for Manchester City. So some key factors here always to look out for is who are the big teams in terms of goals, and who are they playing, and where is really the advantage. So we're going to start off by looking at 3 things. We're going to look at the average goals per game, and we're going to look at goals scored on average versus goals conceded on average, and just see if there's any correlation between some of the bigger or weaker teams and some of the fixtures that are coming up. I really hope all of this makes sense. So if we take a little peek at the schedule for Boxing Day, Hull United playing in the early game, City Liverpool in the later game. Obviously City Liverpool is the standout game. If we pass back one moment to our data set, you can see that the top 2 teams in terms of average goals per game in the Premier League are Manchester City and Liverpool. One thing to note would be that both teams don't tend to concede too many, whereas we would model the Arsenal-Chelsea game that's just been tonight as a low-scoring game, even though some of the stats don't point towards it. Man City-Liverpool will be goals. There will be goals for sure in that game, especially being at the Etihad, and especially being with Liverpool's away form into consideration as well. So we firmly believe there to be goals in that match, and it is the standout match. Taking a look at the markets themselves, City-Liverpool, if you're taking the over-under goal line, 2.5 is probably too cheap. You're probably looking at somewhere around 3. I think that's a pretty accurate goal line for the game, and we would still be taking over that, and I think you're pretty much insured at 3 to be getting a pass back. Some of these prices are rising. We don't have any team news as such right now. There's no surprise injuries that have come in that would affect us, so we would certainly be looking at a goal line of 3 for the Liverpool-Manchester City game. And I think Pinnacle at 183 is actually pretty good value. Yeah, that all makes sense to us. Anyway, moving on and getting back to basics. Some of the other fixtures that are taking place this weekend. Fulham, Chelsea, Arsenal, United, Swansea, Newcastle, Everton and Norwich are all averaging over 2.5 goals per game. So let's zoom in a little bit now on the actual goals scored for some of these clubs. So we can see it's still Man City and Liverpool in terms of scoring. Arsenal, Chelsea, Everton, United, Newcastle drop below 1.5 goals per game, which is always something that we like to keep. So aside from the top two are Arsenal, Chelsea, Everton or United playing at home this weekend. Or this Boxing Day. Let's take a look. Well, certainly Chelsea are. Everton are. Manchester United are playing away. Arsenal are also playing away. So I would take a look at Chelsea, Swansea and Everton, Sunderland. Swansea, first of all, just to have a quick look, tend to concede as many as they score, 135. It's quite a close metric, but their possessional stats are quite high for a team in their position. The goals per shot ratio is actually quite low for a team of their expectancy. Versus Chelsea at home, could be quite a cagey affair. We'd have to take a look at the goal line. In terms of Sunderland, they're conceding a monstrous 1.76 goals per game, playing an Everton team who are buoyant, taking a total of 171. So not only would an Everton home win be pretty much banked, the goal line in this game should be taken over, considering Everton's top form and ability to score both early and late in matches. So we would take a look at the Chelsea game first of all. Two and a half still has a goal line at 174. I think the expectancy for this game at least would be to take 2 3/4, which is where the value is, for sure. 2 3/4 would be the goal line. We would take the over in the Chelsea-Swansea game. I think there'll be a lot of firms out there that wouldn't necessarily agree with us and wouldn't take the risk, but if we can get matched at 195, I certainly... And let me just scroll up here so we can see the price movement. Yeah, I think if we could take the 2 3/4 goal line at 195, it would still have some sort of value for us. We're basing this more on the premise that we know that 3 goals in the game is not a given, but statistically very probable. Let's zoom in as well now on the Everton game. Everton-Sunderland, I feel, could have already had the value sucked out of it. 2.5 doesn't represent much of a goal line either, with 173 being the top price. So again, it would be the same line as Chelsea with a 2 3/4 goal line. And the over, again, getting matched there or thereabouts, 195. Some minor price changes there, but nothing too drastic. Okay, let's flick back and see what other matches there are this weekend and whether there's anything in particular that we need to take a look at. West Ham versus Arsenal could prove to be quite interesting, with the Gunners away from home scoring and winning, but not necessarily in droves. With the West Ham team that's somewhat lacking, this could be one for us to avoid completely. But in order to match up the teams properly, let's just take a quick look at the two teams. West Ham's 4 at 0.82 is particularly bad, if not one of the worst in the top 5 leagues in Europe this season. By contrast, they're not conceding too many goals. Arsenal do tend to score goals. They do score quite a lot more at home than they do away. That's only been recently. They have been involved in a number of matches that have gone over, including games that have gone over with a very short time left in the game. 1 loss in the last 5 for Arsenal, 3 losses in the last 5 for West Ham. It will be a contest. Arsenal, if they do score early, could potentially kill the game off and have the whole thing wrapped up. I think that the timing of goals in this game is what's really going to be critical. I'm not too sure whether there'll be any value in betting Arsenal. If there isn't a good price on 2.5, we certainly wouldn't be taking a 2 3/4 goal line in this game. There's just too much of a probability of the game not hitting those lines. This is the 2.5 line here, and there just isn't the value. 176 at 2.5. Again, the goal line will be 2 3/4, and you're still not getting. I'm looking here at the bigger books. SBO have drawn the line at 196. It is fading. Pinnacle are down to 195. We would still stay away with this, mainly on the premise that Arsenal are away from home and West Ham do tend to play negative containing football, and we've seen tonight a decent Chelsea team actually go to the Emirates and play decent containing football and stop them from scoring, and the belief would be somewhat similar in this game. West Ham statistics are appalling, and even at home, having an average goal scored of 2.12 per game isn't really enough of us to warrant going for 4 goals at the 2 3/4 in order to get a maximum payout. So that game will certainly not be on the sheet right now. At the moment, we have the Everton game, Chelsea game, and Liverpool-Manchester City. Cardiff versus Southampton could be quite interesting. We'll take another look at that. Newcastle-Stoke. Newcastle-Stoke will actually surprise some, I think, if we start to look into the numbers a little bit more. If we just match the two teams up together very quickly, Newcastle versus Stoke. I think we'd actually be very surprised with the output, and we're going to have a real decision to make. So Newcastle and Stoke, when you look at the averages, if you actually take an average of that the game comes up at 247 in terms of goals, which is very close to the goal line necessary in terms of 2.5. If we actually take a look at that price, so we can start to see what the markets are thinking, that could be quite interesting as well to do in parallel. So very big prices here on the over. There's not an expectancy for this game to go over, as you can tell. SBO coming in at 219, Pinnacle down to 216, Marathon at 224, and actually trading upwards. That's quite recent, probably due to low volume at this stage. But this will be a game that a lot of people don't expect goals from, and that's because I believe that Stoke are a very unfashionable team that a lot of people think still don't concede and just win games by the odd goal. That's fine, and at home sometimes they do play true to form, but away it can go either way for Stoke. And I think, considering who they're playing in Newcastle and the time that they're playing them, in terms of the vein of Newcastle's form that they're currently in, this is a Newcastle team that has only lost once in its last 5, playing a Stoke team who have only lost once in its last 5, and both teams come in with very, very, very similar records. Newcastle have won 3, drawn 1. Stoke have won 2, drawn 2. Not bad from either side. We know that Stoke concede over an average of a goal a game at 124. Newcastle are scoring at 141, but also conceding at 129. Stoke score a firm goal per game. So this is, if it goes over, it's only going to 3 goals maximum. But the value that is out there at some of these prices, and I think at 2 point anything on this game, I would take it. At 2.16 on Pinnacle or an SBO, any of the bigger books, we're definitely taking it. As well is the fact here that this is actually quite an underachieving stat at 25% for the goals per shot ratio. What that means is Newcastle will be getting unlucky, slightly unlucky. They will get luckier, and I expect them to be luckier at home, and I think this game has all the ingredients to go over. So this will be, I'm just wondering if there's any sort of other line out there that could be quite interesting to take. Maybe the flat 2 line, if there's any value. No, the value there's gone. Maybe 2.25. 2.25 still offers value and protection in the very likely event that the game has 2 goals at least. You're guaranteed half of your stake back, and I think that'd be quite a sensible bet. We'll probably have units on both 2.25 and 2.5 taking risk, but certainly this game would feature. There's just too much value out there, and the statistics suggest that there is much more value out there than the bookies actually believe. So don't bet in fashion, bet on the numbers. Newcastle Stoke over 2.5. I like it, we like it. Reviewing everything else, it doesn't look like there's actually anything else out there for us. So if we take a look, Hull United 2 unpredictable away. Villa Palace are going to be very, very compact and cagey and try and break that Villa team down in midfield, and if they could leave with a draw, it'd be a fantastic result for them. Cardiff Southampton, recently form has been changing, goals have been conceded more and more frequently, a lot of injuries, at least 5 injuries, 4 big name players out. We wouldn't want to touch Southampton at the moment. Chelsea Swansea we like 2 3/4. Everton we like 2 3/4. Newcastle Stoke we like 2.5. Norwich Fulham not for us. Tottenham West Brom, apart from the rather glaring mistake of hiring Tim Sherwood as full-time manager, Spurs are now starting to get into a new gear and face a West Brom team who are actually on the going out of form. Tottenham West Brom will certainly be a game that we look into in more detail nearer the match, and this one could go right up to the team sheet to really decipher how attacking Spurs play. And if Tottenham do set up in a similar fashion to what they did against Southampton on Sunday, then there could well be value in there if the markets haven't already anticipated it. And bear in mind, this is a Tottenham team with a very, very, very poor start to the season in terms of goal scoring. Betting on Spurs goals is something that only a madman would do currently, but we just take a look at both teams are actually averaging under 2.5 in at 2.4, and have very, very, very similar records. Both scored the same amount of goals and conceded the same amount of goals, same goal difference. Both scoring the exact same amount on average at home and away, obviously. So the game could really go either way. Tottenham lead the Premier League in terms of shots on target, with an average of 5.76 per game, but they were leading the league in terms of worst goals per shot ratio, but they've actually they've come off the bottom now, and Spurs with 18.38% are getting unlucky. And for a team that has so many shots on target, if they were to convert at the same level as West Brom, well, just off the top of my head, looking at the stats here, that'd probably be another 14 goals per season. Roughly 13, 14 goals this season they would have scored more if their shooting was as accurate as some of the other teams that they are playing against. So Spurs West Brom, it's going to be a knife edge. It's going to boil down to a lucky one, and I don't think the markets will be kind to us on a Tottenham game. I think there's too much fashion about Spurs, and is Tim going to bring back the good old days of playing 16 players up front? Let's see. The over-under markets tell us already that there is indeed confidence in what Tim Sherwood is doing. Ladbrokes leading the way at 178. I wonder if that has changed dramatically. No, it hasn't changed dramatically, but I suspect this market would change. I'd certainly be looking for a much higher price than that, so Tottenham can be removed from our selection this weekend, as can West Ham and Arsenal as discussed, which leaves us with 4 games in the over 2.5 market bracket that we feel could be filled. Chelsea, Everton, Newcastle, Manchester City. It's always interesting to compare notes or thought processes or work-throughs, as some people call them, that we make manually, and compare it to the modelling that our automated computer system does. So right now we're looking at some statistics, and we're playing around and just having a very open analysis of the situation, and the thought process that I've gone through now, which is really who's scoring the most goals, who's the most potent, who's playing at home, who is not playing at home, how are these matches matching up. Sometimes dismissing games very quickly is the right thing to do. Sometimes, even though it might feel like the right thing to do, you need to look at things into more detail. And I think that in today's roundup, and as we start to relaunch the Money Back Bet site, and as we start to make more and more of this content, hopefully I'm not racing away with myself, but I think it's good if I at least share the thought processes that some of us have. And even though some of these videos are made for instructional and educational purposes, I suppose the point I'm trying to make here extremely badly is I'm trying to go through things quite slowly and explain thought processes and throw some things in there so that we can all become more intelligent about this together. Anyway, regardless, I think we're cracking on for time now. It's going to be a very, very, very interesting Premier League on Boxing Day. Our selections, Our selections I'm confident with. I certainly wouldn't be against starting the 2 and 3/4 lines for Chelsea and Everton. For Newcastle starting at 2.5. For Manchester City versus Liverpool, it's going to be quite a high line. However, I'm still convinced. And the reason I go straight to 3.5 is because that would be my absolute maximum, and to see that at 2.38 is extremely encouraging. The 3 line for City, still very encouraging. I actually think that there's a good chance of making money this weekend with these 4 Premier League games. What I won't do is I won't succumb to betting on some of the other leagues that are out there, the Championship or any of the Scottish games, and that's another part of what we're talking about here in terms of mental toughness and control, especially if you want to make money in these markets. They're 2 things that you're going to need, and there will be a whole host of boring nonsense games over the Christmas period, including lesser teams, including teams from Iran, Iraq and Australia. Just forget it. Forget about all of the other leagues until the beginning of January. We have a little bit of Premiership magic here. There are festivities going on, which means there will be lax of concentration in some games, and normally that poor form leads to a lack of goals rather than an increase in defensive mistakes. So anything can happen. However, I do think the 4 games we have are a nice field. 4 games out of 10, so 40% of the matches to go over 3 goals or more, I think is a realistic thing to ask for, especially in the teams we have. If I was concerned about any of these games going over, right now I'd be more concerned about the Chelsea-Swansea game dying out at something like 2-0 rather than the Everton game fading in the other direction. We will keep our data sets as up to date as possible. If there are any changes to any of these fixtures or teams, we'll announce it in the next couple of days. But until then, have a very, very good Christmas Eve, Christmas Day and Boxing Day, and we will see you on the other side to round up our results and to tell you how we did after the Boxing Day activities, because by that point I'm sure I'm going to need a little bit more football in my life. Anyway, thank you very much for paying attention. This has been the weekend roundup for the English Premier League fixtures for Boxing Day here at Money Back Bet. We'll see you on the other side.